Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to our weekly current affairs quiz. Under this series, every Thursday, we are covering important prelims topics from current affairs of the last 1 week through MCQ-based questions. We hope you guys are liking these sessions, and if you're benefiting from it, please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to press the like button and do subscribe to our channel. So let's begin with the quiz for this week. But before that, we have a very important announcement. As part of the upcoming Holi festival, we are glad to offer a flat 50% discount on our IAS courses along with a 6-month free extension. And students can even get free access to our library that is present at Unacademy centers. So do enroll for the program. The English online classroom program has started from 16th March and you can contact us for further details. So with this, let's begin with the discussion, but please look at the answers for the questions of last week's quiz. I have given all the topics that we discussed in the last week's session along with the respective answers. You can pause the screen, take a screenshot, or you can take a look and compare it with your answers based on last week's questions. So this week, I have chosen 9 important topics from multiple sources, including the Indian Express, Business Standard, and the PIB. So let's take up questions on these 9 topics one by one, and let's understand the context along with a brief explanation, and I shall give you the right answer as well. So let's start with the first question. Consider the following statements. The core monsoon zone is a region in India stretching from Gujarat in the west to West Bengal in the east. Second statement says IMD, or India Meteorological Department, demarcates it as an agricultural region where cropping is mostly rain-fed. And the last statement says atmospheric research test bed in central India has been set up for studying vital cloud processes associated with the monsoons over central India's core monsoon zone. How many of the above statements is or are correct? This topic was in news because we had an important article in the Indian Express. According to the article, the Ministry of Earth Sciences has funded the establishment of the atmospheric research test bed in central India. This is a very important initiative that has been taken up by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. It's a research facility that has come up in Madhya Pradesh near Bhopal, in a village called Silkeda, which is located to the northwest of Bhopal. This important meteorological research facility has come up, which is one of the most advanced meteorological centers in India. It's going to be operated by the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, that is based out of Pune. So this project, funded by Ministry of Earth Sciences, is focused on studying the weather patterns and monsoon phenomena in central India, which is part of the core monsoon zone in India. So let's understand a little more details about this important project. This project contains multiple advanced meteorological instruments that can help us understand cloud processes and as well as the impact of the low pressure and cyclonic events that take place in Bay of Bengal and how it influences the monsoon rainfall pattern in central India. So the location of this project has been very carefully chosen and it is located right in the middle of India's core monsoon zone. So this project will essentially help in better understanding the rainfall pattern in the core monsoon zone and also to make more accurate predictions of rainfall in the core monsoon zone. Now this region is very vital for India because this is considered as the food bowl of India. If you look at the map here, it clearly depicts this part of central India stretching all the way from Gujarat to West Bengal. And this is considered as the CMZ, or the core monsoon zone in India, which primarily depends on rainfall for agriculture. It is primarily a rain-fed area, and farming all across this region is heavily dependent on the monsoon rains, meaning this region doesn't have very good irrigation. So farmers heavily depend on the monsoon rain itself for the cropping cycle, and especially in the month of July and August. Various atmospheric phenomena contribute to very good rainfall in this region, which is crucial for cultivating crops in the core monsoon zone. So this zone, as you can see, stretches from Gujarat to West Bengal, and it is called a core monsoon zone because this is one part of India which is heavily dependent on rainwater for agriculture. The IMD has notified this as a core monsoon zone, and it even brings out a special forecast for this particular region in order to assist the farmers in their cropping cycle. So this region is primarily rain-fed, and it is considered as India's food bowl. So it's in this context that the Ministry of Earth Sciences has established this meteorological research facility called ART in order to study the phenomena that are contributing to rainfall in this region. So Atmospheric Research Testbed has been strategically established in Madhya Pradesh because it is right in the middle of core monsoon zone, and there are no disturbances, be it pollution or other anthropological activities, which could interfere with the monsoon prediction. So it will help Ministry of Earth Sciences, Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, and even IMD to provide more accurate forecasts in the coming days. So based on this understanding, let's come back to the question and check how many of these statements are correct. If you read the statements again, you will notice that all the three given statements are correct. So the right answer is option C. All three are correct. That is the correct answer. Now let's move on to the second question. The Chakshu Portal, launched by the government recently, is meant for tracking tax evasion by high net worth individuals, enabling users to report cyber frauds and fraudulent communication, encouraging citizens to report crimes against women, or for allowing bank employees to report fraudulent transactions. Which of them is the correct answer? This topic was in news because we had another important article in the Indian Express that was referring to the Chakshu Portal that was recently launched by the Department of Telecommunication. This is a cybersecurity initiative that has been taken up by the Department of Telecommunication. I'm sure all of you receive a number of spam messages, fraudulent calls on WhatsApp, and other such communication, which is basically trying to commit a cyber fraud on the victim. So the government of India has launched this dedicated portal where you can complain about these spams and fraudulent calls and messages which pose a cyber threat to Indians and as well as to the Indian economy. There have been many such scandals as a result of these fraudulent communications where they trick the target to click on some links or to share their personal details, including their banking details, or they force them to commit some action which will compromise their personal identity or even their financial integrity. So to deal with such fraudulent communication and cyber fraud, a dedicated portal has been launched as a cybersecurity initiative by the DOT. So this is the Chakshu Portal. So here you can report various cyber frauds that are committed through such fraudulent messages, calls, and other forms of fraudulent communication. So there is a dedicated portal where you can log in and provide all the details, and the Department of Telecom will work with telecom and internet service providers to take action against those cyber criminals. So the answer is very clear. The correct answer is option B. The Chakshu Portal is meant for enabling the reporting of cyber frauds and fraudulent communication. Let's look at question number 3. This question is from Polity. Which of the below articles in the Constitution provides for the duration of Houses of Parliament and state legislatures respectively? So we have a set of options provided you need to check which of these two articles deal with the duration of the houses of parliament, that's Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and the state legislatures. This topic is in news because the Election Commission has announced the election schedule, not just for general elections across the country, but also a few state assembly elections have been announced. For example, the assembly election for Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. So in this context, we have to understand what is the duration of the houses of the parliament, that is the Lok Sabha in particular, and the state legislature. These provisions are contained in our constitution itself under article number 83 with regard to houses of parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and under article 172 with regard to the state legislatures. So if you look at article 83 and 172, this is where the tenure or the duration of the houses is defined. The article 83 says that Council of States, that is your Rajya Sabha, the Rajya Sabha shall not be dissolved. It is not subjected to dissolution because it's a permanent house. It says that 1/3 of the members of Rajya Sabha, they shall retire every 2 years. Whereas the Lok Sabha, the duration is clearly specified as 5 years. From the date on which it meets for the first time, the duration of Lok Sabha extends to a maximum of 5 years. And it can only be extended under exceptional circumstances, such as when there is a national emergency which has been proclaimed. If there is a proclamation of emergency, then Lok Sabha's tenure can be extended up to 1 year at one time. And once the emergency is revoked, it has to cease to exist within 6 months. So similarly, Article 172 provides for the duration of your state legislature and also the legislative council. So these are the two articles. So now coming back to the question, the right answer would be option C, Article 83 and Article 172. Let's look at question number 4. The IPC scale seen recently in news is a nuclear catastrophe scale or food security and famine scale or pandemic potential scale or tsunami impact scale. So let's understand what is the IPC scale. The IPC scale stands for Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Scale. This topic is in news because according to this article in the Indian Express, Gaza and Haiti, they are staring at a massive famine triggered by the conflicts going on in these regions. We have discussed the gang violence and instability in the Caribbean country of Haiti. We have spoken about the ongoing war in Gaza. These conflicts and events have disrupted food supplies for civilians, and civilians who are trapped in these conflict zones, they are suffering from lack of food security and they are staring at a devastating famine which might kill thousands or maybe lakhs of people. So to estimate the extent of lack of food security and a possible famine situation, there is a global scale that has been devised called IPC scale. It stands for Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Scale. It was brought out for the first time in the year 2004 when Somalia descended into a civil war. When the East African country of Somalia descended into a civil war and created a famine situation that affected the Somalian people, a group of global organizations got together to come out with this scale through which we could determine the extent of famine, the extent of lack of food security in a particular region. So this initiative was taken up by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN along with the World Food Programme and many other global organizations, including some NGOs. So a few international organizations under the United Nations like FAO, World Food Programme, and few non-profit and non-government organizations, collectively they came together to develop this scale through which one could measure the extent of lack of food security and the possibility of a famine in a particular region, especially in regions where disasters have occurred or in regions where wars and conflicts are going on. It's very much possible for a famine situation to occur. So based on the findings of this particular scale, accordingly, the global organizations will try to arrange food aid and food relief so that the required food supplies can be provided to the affected people. So you can see the scale provided over here. There is a color-coded scale developed under IPC scale. You have generally food secure regions, which is the safest region where there is enough availability of food. Then you have borderline food insecurity, acute food and livelihood crisis, humanitarian emergency, which marks a red alert, and finally the worst stage of all, which is famine or a humanitarian catastrophe. This is measured by using certain indicators. For example, a famine is declared if at least 20% of the households in the given region, if they are facing complete lack of food and other basic needs, and if they are suffering from starvation and death. And if destitution is being reported evidently, and if acute malnutrition is prevalent amongst more than 30% of the population, and mortality rates are exceeding 2 people per 10,000 population per day due to hunger and malnutrition, in those circumstances, famine or humanitarian catastrophe is declared. So according to IPC scale, right now Gaza and Haiti are staring at the worst possible situation, which is a famine or a humanitarian catastrophe, which means several people could start dying very soon due to the complete lack of availability of food in these conflict hit areas. So now looking at the question, the correct answer here is option B. Is that clear? So let's look at question number 5. Project GROOT, recently seen in news, is what? It refers to what? A UN initiative focusing on plant root health and nutrition, a general purpose foundation model for humanoid robots by NVIDIA, an Oscar-winning movie based on climate change by Marvel, an interplanetary mission to plant seeds on Mars by NASA. So let's understand what is Project GROOT, and then I'll give you the answer. There was an article in the Indian Express that was talking about a new AI initiative launched by NVIDIA. I hope you know that NVIDIA is a very popular chip manufacturer, and it produces GPUs, graphic processing units, which are essentially the foundation of fast computing and AI computing. If you remember, in the last session, we spoke about India AI mission, and I explained how GPUs are very expensive. They have very fast processing capabilities, but it's very, very expensive. For example, in crypto mining, in Bitcoin mining, GPUs are used to achieve very fast computing capabilities. Similarly, for AI tools, you need GPU units to drive the processing that is needed. So NVIDIA has launched this humanoid robot project called Project GROOT. It stands for Generalized Robo 00 Technology. This is actually not 00, it is 00. But of course you can call it Project GROOT. And the idea is to develop a humanoid robot driven by an AI algorithm which can learn from human actions and human behavior and human language. Basically, the goal of this project, led by NVIDIA and other companies, is to develop a humanoid robot which can listen to other humans speaking and learn from that and mimic the same language. It can look at human action and imitate what humans are exactly doing. So that is the purpose of Project GROOT. So essentially, these humanoid robots, once they are realized, they could become great virtual assistants. They could take over some of the routine tasks and hazardous tasks. Let's say, for example, there is some hazardous work in a factory or an industry. or let's say cleaning the sewage tanks, right, which is seen as an unhygienic job. Instead of human beings doing it, we can show the action to the robot. The robot will look at the humans and the tasks that they are performing, and it will learn their movements. It will learn the task on its own, and it will start performing the tasks. So it can listen to humans as well, how they speak, learn the language, and mimic human-like activity. So essentially, job skills can be taught to such a humanoid robot. So that is the end game of this project, and it's one of the most exciting projects in the world of AI. So the correct answer here is option B. It's a general purpose foundation model for humanoid robots by NVIDIA. Question number 6. The annual State of the Global Climate Report is published by UNEP, WMO, IPCC, or Climate Action Network. This report was recently brought out by the World Meteorological Organization, or WMO. Indian Express and even Hindu and many other newspapers carried important articles and have taken this topic from Business Standard. So according to this report, the State of the Global Climate Report, which is published by World Meteorological Organization, we are headed towards very dangerous consequences with regard to climate change. The report for 2023 has established that the year 2023 was the hottest year on record. A red alert has been sounded by the WMO's report as far as global warming and climate change is concerned. According to the report, global average temperatures has increased by 1.45 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This was referring to the global average temperature near the surface. Under Paris Agreement, the goal is to limit the rise in average temperatures to under 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we are almost approaching this mark or this threshold which has been set under the Paris Agreement. And the other alarming thing about the report is that on most of the important climate indicators, we are crossing the limits and we are hitting record levels. Be it the extent of greenhouse level concentration, or the melting of ice caps or rising sea levels, or even with regard to marine heat waves in the seas and the oceans. On all these parameters and indicators, we have breached the red mark. We have crossed the threshold, and that is the warning which has been sounded by this report of WMO. So that is why the topic was in news. So the correct answer is option B. The State of the Global Climate Report is published by World Meteorological Organization. Let's look at question number 7. It deals with the concept of gender pay gap. We have to check how many of the given statements are correct. Statement 1 says the gender pay gap is defined as the gap between the average wage level of all women and all men working in the labor market for a monthly salary, hourly, or on daily wages. The concept is defined by UN Women. That's the second statement. And third statement says it is a measurable indicator of inequality between men and women. How many of these statements are correct? See, this topic was in news because we had this important article in the Indian Express that was referring to the concept of gender pay gap. World Bank has brought out a report carrying out an analysis on the concept of gender pay gap. According to this World Bank assessment, if women are earning 77 cents in the labor market collectively on average, men are earning $1. So clearly you can see a difference between the wages that are paid to men and the wages that are paid to women. Is that clear? This concept of gender pay gap was developed and defined by International Labour Organization, by the ILO. It is a measure of inequality. It is an indicator which can be measured, which can be quantified, and it tells you the wage difference, the gender-based gap difference with regard to the pay or the wages drawn by men and women workers in the labor market. So how is it measured? How is it captured? It is measured as the gap or the difference between the average wage level of all women workers in the labor market compared with the wages of all the men laborers in the labor market. So they could be working on monthly salaries or hourly basis or daily wage earners. So the average of all the wages earned by men and women is taken, and then the difference is calculated. This is called gender pay gap. It highlights gender-based inequality in our workplace and in our labor market. So this is a very important assessment. It's a very important indicator. So coming back to the question, statement 1 is definitely correct. It is talking about how gender pay gap is measured. I just explained it to you. So statement 1 is correct. But statement 2 is wrong. It's saying it is defined by UN Women. This is wrong. It was developed and defined by the ILO, International Labour Organization. And it is a measurable indicator. It highlights inequality between men and women. So statement 3 is correct. So how many are correct? Only 2. Option B becomes the right answer. Moving on to the 8th question. The Summit for Democracy was launched by which country? Was it launched by US or European Union or Germany or United Kingdom? Let's understand what is the Summit for Democracy. There was a press release by the PIB from the Prime Minister's office, according to which PM Modi has virtually addressed the Summit for Democracy, the 3rd Summit for Democracy, which is being hosted by South Korea. This summit was launched in 2021 by the United States. It was an initiative of President Joe Biden to strengthen democracies around the world and bring the democracies together for regular virtual interaction. They oppose the rise of autocratic tendencies. The summit brings all the major democracies together, and they not only discuss how they can strengthen democracy, they also talk about countering autocratic regimes, how we can bring down autocracies and strengthen democracies. This is the theme, and it's primarily organized by the United States. The US hosted the first summit. The second summit was also hosted by US in 2023, but in collaboration with other like-minded countries. Along with the US, even Costa Rica, Netherlands, South Korea, and Zambia, all these countries together hosted Summit for Democracy along with the US. This was the second summit. So now the 3rd summit is taking place in South Korea. South Korea is hosting the 3rd summit, and PM Modi has also addressed the summit. So coming back to the question, the correct answer is option A. It was the United States which launched Summit for Democracy. So let's take up the last question. Which of the following pairs are correctly matched? On the right, you have a list of military exercises in which India participates, and it has been matched with a set of countries, and we need to check whether the pairs are correctly matched or not. You have exercise LAMITIYE matched with Seychelles, exercise Tiger Triumph matched with USA, exercise Ekuverin matched with Maldives. We had a press release from the PIB, from the Ministry of Defense, that mentioned 2 of these military exercises. Last week, Indian Army contingent has departed to Seychelles to participate in exercise LAMITIYE. This is a biennial army exercise between Indian Army and the Seychelles Defense Forces, and LAMITIYE, in the local language of Seychelles, the Creole language, it means friendship. So through these military exercises, India has been building close relations with Indian Ocean countries such as Seychelles. So this is a bilateral exercise between Indian Army and Seychelles Defense Forces that happens once in 2 years. It helps in building interoperability, and it brings better coordination between the Indian Army and the Seychelles Defense Forces. Then India, US have launched a new military exercise. Apart from all the military exercises they have launched a new exercise called Tiger Triumph. The first edition has been held, and it is a bilateral tri-service humanitarian exercise focusing on disaster management. It brings all the three services together: Indian Army, Indian Navy, Indian Air Force, and as well as the tri-services of US, the US Army, the US Navy, and US Air Force. So the three services of both the countries together participate in HADR operations, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations, which is part of disaster management efforts. So the specific focus of Tiger Triumph is on disaster management, how India, US together can provide HADR assistance to disaster affected countries. So with this, we can easily go ahead and answer this question. Of course, I have to tell you about exercise Ekuverin as well, right? The question, please make a correction here. In the question, I had given this as Maldives, right? So now let's see how many of the pairs are correctly matched. 1 and 2 are definitely correctly matched. Even 3 is correctly matched. Exercise Ekuverin is between Indian Army and the Maldivian Defense Forces. So kindly make a correction. Erase Sri Lanka here. In the previous slide, I had mentioned Maldives only. So Ekuverin is a military exercise between Indian Army and the Maldivian Defense Forces. So this is also correct. All 3 pairs are correct. So option D becomes the right answer, 1, 2, and 3. So on this note, I would like to conclude this week's current affairs quiz. I hope you guys have liked the session, and if you have benefited from it, please let me know in the comments. Do press the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. We'll see you next week. Take care.